Well, thanks, Rob. I really appreciate that introduction. And those of you not from Michigan, welcome to Michigan. It's Pure Michigan Day, so happy to have you here. And for our Michiganders, it's still a Pure Michigan Day, and we enjoy it and we love it here, so it's great. What I'd like to do to start with is actually take you back to a personal story, back to February 2009. And if you go back to Michigan in 2009 in that time frame, we were a mess. We had about 14% unemployment. Personal income had actually been declining in our state. People were moving out of Michigan, or young people were leaving our state. And as large part, we had a terrible environment to do business. We had something called the Michigan business tax. We hadn't really balanced the budget well, and we had 2 budget shutdowns in 2 of the last 3 years in that kind of time frame in terms of a budget not even getting done until the next fiscal year started. Our regulatory environment was not in good shape at all. I mean, people just didn't like doing business in Michigan. They didn't think they were being treated right or fairly. And so this evening in February of 2009, I was out on date night. It was a Friday night in Ann Arbor, and I was out to dinner with my wife. And I was actually enjoying a glass of wine. And this topic came up. So I sort of got on a tear going through those list of issues I just sort of went through with you about what a mess Michigan is and how there are a number of things we could do to solve that problem. And then we started talking to say, well, there's an election coming up, and there are a lot of good people talking about running for governor. Well-intentioned people, but they tend to be political people. And as we sort of talked through the different people running, it's like I kept on going, well, yeah, but a number of them kept on talking about the Michigan business tax, about how they thought the right answer was to cut the surcharge or to cut the Michigan business tax in half, or that we needed to do more in incentives to bring people into our state, because that was the normal model in Michigan at that time, is we're sort of trying to buy companies into Michigan by giving them huge incentive packages. And we went through the list, and I told my wife, I said, no, these are the things we need to do. And I thought I was relaxing. She looked at me and she said, I think you should run for governor. And so we actually spent a month talking about it as a family with the kids, because it was a family decision. But that was really the catalyst that sort of caused me to run for governor, was going through that dialogue with my wife. And when you looked at it, a lot of it was there are people that meant well and good, hard-working people. But I'm not sure they had an appreciation from the private sector side of what needed to be done in terms of what it takes to run a business to be successful, because it comes down to a couple topics in really reinventing Michigan: the need for more and better jobs and a future for our kids. And when you look at it, one of the fundamental premises that was simply messed up was this concept about saying, well, let's go incentivize people to bring them into Michigan. And everyone talked about it. And that's just a really bad idea. And why is it a bad idea? Well, the way I viewed it, it was business 101. If you have a challenged business, if your business is challenged, and you're having issues with your customer base, what do? Do you go make sure your current customers are happy? Or do you go after new customers? It's a really simple answer. You don't spend your time going after new customers. It's about making sure your current customers are happy and creating the very best environment for them. That's one of the fundamental starting points that wasn't recognized at all by the traditional political world. And I still don't think it is in our country. And if you stop and think about it, that's the very essence of economic gardening. The comeback of Michigan was not going to be based on who we go give big packages to come do new business in Michigan. The comeback of Michigan is based on people already in Michigan, with organizations and companies, and creating an environment where they can be successful and flourish and do well. That's really simple. And then you go to the next level and you say, well, don't you want to go out and get other people to come to Michigan? It's great to have non-Michigan people here. We want you to come do business here. But ask yourself the question, what's the best marketing to get someone else to get a new customer That's really simple too. It's not the ad you run, and we got awesome ads. Pure Michigan is a great campaign. It's not the ad you run or what I say to you. It's word of mouth from happy customers. The best marketing in the world is you meeting a happy customer, right? And so, isn't the best way to be successful not only to build your economic garden, but to grow to your garden, is to have the people in your garden thriving, flourishing, and telling everybody else they know about that success? It's that simple. Too often we make this way too complicated. This is basic common sense, 101 kind of stuff. And so that's fundamentally what we've been all about. And that's why it's great to have you here talking about economic gardening. It is fundamental. Now, to talk more to the present about how do you make that environment happen? Well, one of the first things I looked at in terms of being governor is what's the role of government? That had been lost and is still lost in too many places in our country. If you ask the average person, if you go ask a public official, why do you exist? It'd be interesting to see what answer you get. Again, it's not difficult. The role of government is customer service. It's to serve our citizens and our organizations in our state. We're a customer service business, and you're the customer. And then you go back to the more and better jobs question. The role of government is not to create jobs. I terrify people when I said, if that was our role, how'd you like to think about 10 million people working for the state of Michigan? That would be really scary. Our role is to enable job creation to happen, to create an environment of economic freedom for you to be successful. That's our role. And how do we do that? What are 2 or 3 of the elements to make that happen? Well, one of the first ones that I mentioned was the budget problems we had and the tax problems. One of the first things to do is stability and certainty. The first rule of a good business person is you want to know what the rules are and they're going to be fairly and consistently applied. So one of the simple things we did is let's get our budget act together so you actually can reliably count on us being fiscally responsible. You don't want to go into a place where you have to worry about all of a sudden they've messed up their budgeting so bad there's going to be some big tax increase or there's some environment they don't know where the revenue is going to come from or some other mess. So for the last 2 years, I'm pleased to say we've been as good as anyone in the United States. We've been leading in best practices to say we balance our budget, no accounting gimmicks, no games. We're paying down our long-term liabilities in a financially prudent, responsible way. We're putting money in our savings account, our rainy day fund. And we're thinking about the future. Then on the tax system, it was relatively straightforward. I talked about the Michigan business tax. It was the dumbest tax in the United States. And I mentioned people wanted to cut the surcharge or cut it in half. Well, my simple statement on the campaign trail is if you have something dumb and divide it by 2, it's still dumb. So we eliminated the Michigan business tax. And what was the guiding principle? It's simple. It's simple, fair, and efficient. Get out of winners and losers. Get out of special deals. You want to be treated fairly. And what a lot of government people still don't understand with these big incentive packages that other places are doing, they're not free. And basically, every time one of those big packages went out to someone, it's coming at the expense of everyone else. It's costing the people in your state money. And again, that's contrary to good gardening. Let's create the environment for success, not play the game ourselves. So we've done that. And then you go to the regulatory front. It's not just the regulations you have, and we're revising all that. We're systematically going through all the regulations in the state of Michigan. We're getting rid of 6 regulations for every one we've had to add. Just as important as the amount of regulations, though, is how they're being applied. As I mentioned, there was an attitude that government was there and penalizing you. They weren't there to help you. Well, we're turning that around, and that's a big cultural change. Our role is, how do we fulfill our duty to all our citizens for safety, protection, all the things that we need to do, and at the same time help you be successful? So we've done some really cool things. In the agriculture area, we came up with something called the MEAP program, which is actually a program to have farms certify themselves and then actually have a better standard for review and regulatory treatment. So it's like a quality control system that works great, that farms are happy to do. So there's great opportunity on those kind of forefronts. Now, to continue, though, on the gardening front, because there are important roles the government can play in terms of good customer service and being a facilitator and convener. Not the only party with all the answers, but there are important things we're doing here in Michigan that I think are really exciting. One of the things we're doing is we're recognizing that supply chain management is critically important. Getting businesses connected with other businesses. We have something called Pure Michigan Business Connect. A really radical idea about helping Michigan businesses do business with other Michigan businesses. We're not incentivizing that. We're not putting out dollars, but because we've helped be a convener, a person bringing people together, getting us to talk to one another, it's clear that hundreds of millions of dollars more of business is being done in Michigan with other Michigan companies simply because we've been able to get people together to talk. And that's good business. And we're going to continue to grow that and recognize there are critical supply chain roles we can play in terms of just communicating how we can work with one another better. Now, the next topic is an even bigger one in a lot of ways, and that's the question of talent. If you look at it, and I talk to business people, and I ask, what are your top 3 issues for now and the long term? Talent will show up in one of those top 3 almost every time. People are worried about having those critical skill sets for success and having a highly productive, talented workforce. And again, I like the word talent more than workforce. Because if you look at the American system, we have a messed up system in America when it comes to talent. We have some great institutions and great parts of the system, but there's a fundamental mismatch. Think about it this way. We have our whole educational system, K-12, our universities, all those great people. And then we have places like workforce development. So we have all these people working on the supply side, the supply of talent. And they talk about all the talent they're supplying all the time, right? Well, then on the other hand, there's not enough connection to all the private sector, anyone employing people over here, the demand side. And they're doing all their analysis over here. So instead of basic economics are you do a chart where you have supply and demand on the same chart. We've built a system where we do supply on one chart, demand on another chart, and they don't talk to one another. That's dumb. And so to illustrate that in a tangible sense, we have just over 8% unemployment. We were at 14. We're just slightly above the national average now. Dramatic improvement. We're the comeback state. That's still too high. We did a website, a special message on talent last year, and created mitalent.org. And by collecting demand from the private sector and other employers, we show there are 80,000 open jobs in Michigan. And that illustrates that paradox. 8% unemployment, 80,000 open jobs. Those 80,000 open jobs are roughly equivalent to 2 percentage points of reduction of unemployment. And so the point is, let's lay them together and understand that, because that's economic gardening again. To make sure you have the resources right in your backyard to be the most successful organization possible. And so we're going to lead the nation in talent development, both for engineering talent, university-required talent, but also the skilled tradespeople. One of the most exciting events I had recently is I went to Cadillac, Michigan, and they took me to a VOTEC program because I'd been talking about welders. I've been talking about welders ever since the campaign trail. If you're a welder in Michigan, you can get a job in about 20 minutes, any place in Michigan. So they wanted to show off, and I thought it was awesome. They wanted to show me how they had high school kids teaching 6th grade girls how to weld. So I go to this place. It's awesome. They got the masks down, the gloves on, these 6th grade girls. They're actually there in the welding booths making little Michigans to take home to their parents. Great marketing, by the way. I got to give them a lot of credit because they had a little star for where Cadillac was. And if you think welding's easy, try to do 2 peninsulas in welding. So these girls lifted their mask. I said, what do you think? They looked at me and said, what do you think about this? Oh, we want to be welders. Now, I've had 3 kids, so I know in 6th grade, next week they may want to be something else, but for that day, they wanted to be welders. And that was awesome, because that was sending the message we want to send about what an honorable, thoughtful, well-paying, great career opportunity that is. So while we want to encourage people to be college ready and go off to college and get degrees, we also want people to understand just as good is to be career ready in that capacity and to go off and to be a machinist, a mechanic, a welder. And so we're going to lead that charge because that ties right into gardening. So we are biased that we think we're the best place to be because we're identifying these issues early on and we're going to show leadership. We are the comeback place. We were messed up just as Rob said. But it's time to reinvent ourselves, and we are doing that. And as Rob said, we're doing it with a simple philosophy of relentless positive action. And as he stated, the philosophy is very simple. We don't blame anyone for anything. Blame never solved a problem. We don't care about credit. Credit doesn't matter. Results are what matter. Getting the job done is what matters. And then fundamentally, the issue of what RPA is about problem solving. To say, here are problems, and some of these problems have been a year or 2 old. Some of the things we've taken on that I was talking to you about have been there 30, 40 years. The last 2 budgets we did were the fastest in the last 30 years in the state of Michigan. And again, it wasn't a question of speed, but quality on top of speed. And it's to take these problems one after another and just solve them in a relentless fashion. And by doing that, you create a new culture of success about innovation, entrepreneurship, fire, passion, and getting things done. So I'm very excited to be here because it's not about what I do. It's not about me. And it's not about just Rob. It's about that combination of people coming together. What SBAM's doing, what the small business people are doing, what the MEDC is doing, what we're all doing as a team of Michiganders. That's what gets me passionate and excited. And I really appreciate the opportunity to share that with you because I hope it's something that catches on. That whether you're from Michigan or someplace else, I hope you come out of this conference with a fire and passion to say, gardening is where it is at. It is fundamental. And here are the right roles for the players in this equation. Here's the role for businesses. Here's the role for educational institutions. Here's the role for government. And then have each of us play our role well as team players. By doing that, we'll not only reinvent what's going on in Michigan, but we'll help reinvent our country in a positive, exciting way, not just for us, but for our kids. Thank you so much.